Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. KHALID MALIK is the founder of Applied Linguistics Groups and he has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. He published more than 25 research papers. He taught a lot of foreign universities and presently admitted to a postdoctoral study in a Canadian university. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966 Pakistani or copying, or downloading a QR code to join at.
Human language versus animal communication.
Human and animal communication definition.
What qualifies as communication? Communication refers to an action that aims to transmit information from one to others, either verbally or through nonverbal signals. Humans rely mostly on language to communicate, which sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom. While other animals can also communicate through vocalizations, human language is unique in terms of its capability to use organized language to express complex ideas.
Animals do this through other means, e.g. the Caribbean reef squid changes color to send different messages like warning others of a predator or for courting purposes. Communication refers to an action that aims to transmit information, either verbally or through nonverbal signals, e.g. vocalizations, gestures, movements, scents or pheromones. A key aspect of human communication is language.
Language is a communicative system that involves structuring words in a meaningful way to convey meaning.
So, according to this definition, can different ways that animals communicate be called languages? Not exactly. Animal communication usually involves signals. Whether it's an excretion of scents, pheromones, a vocalization or a movement, these signals lack the essential features of a language. Although, some animals do communicate through means of sounds. Characteristics of human language and animal communication. Now, let's look at the key characteristics of human language and animal communication. Characteristics of animal communication. Animals use communication to influence the actions of other individuals or encourage cooperation. Their communication is limited to signals and mostly serves a few purposes. Based on these purposes, we can distinguish the four types of animal communication: communication for survival, reproduction, gaining or maintaining territory and obtaining food. To increase the herd survival and communicate about a predator's presence, impales use vocalization. They can also use their body language to warn others about the threat by freezing. For reproduction, the male peacock will display his colorful tail of feathers and entice the female by wiggling the feathers around. This way, peacocks signal their genetic fitness to potential mating partners. Have you ever spotted a cat rubbing its cheeks on objects and walls? It's the cat's way of marking their territory. This way, cats deposit their pheromones in a way that other cats will be able to recognize. Pets like cats and dogs can also try to get your attention and use vocalizations when they want to be fed. In the wild, animals also communicate with signals to obtain food. For example, bees use food calls to communicate the location of a food source. Carl von Frisch's bee study, 1950. Carl von Frisch is a German-Austrian researcher awarded a Nobel Prize for his fascinating findings about the communicative behavior of honey bees. He demonstrated that bees have color vision. As he continued his research on perceptions of the bee, he also found that bees have a strong sense of orientation and direction. This allows them to localize and communicate about food sources even kilometers away from the hive. The Carl von Frisch, 1950, study aimed to investigate the systems that bees use to communicate about the location of food with the colony. To observe the behavior of honey bees, he placed bees in a hive with glass windows and dishes containing sugar syrup in different locations. As the bees visited the feeding sites, they were marked with colored dots to distinguish which site they were coming back from. Von Frisch found that bees performed elaborate dances, which appeared to communicate to other bees where they found the food. The pace at which they waggled indicated how far away was the food, and the angle at which they performed these movements in relation to a vertical line indicated the direction of the food source. These findings led von Frisch to conclude that bees use a set of movements to communicate the exact location of a food source to other colony members. Characteristics of human language. Even though we use language in everyday life, we often don't think about how complex it is. Language is universal across cultures and unique to our species. The languages spoken across the globe differ, but interestingly, these languages share similar characteristics. Charles Hockett, in 1960, identified up to 16 features of language, some of which are shared and some that differ from human language to primitive communication. The list of characteristics was later developed further by Jean Acheson, 1983. Acheson argued that there are 11 essential characteristics of language. She considered 4 of these criteria as particularly unique to human language. The first criterion is displacement, which refers to the human ability to exchange information about abstract, hypothetical, and distant ideas. Animal communication is limited to mostly current or near-past events. While impales use sounds and movements to communicate about an immediate threat, they don't communicate about a threat that happened 2 weeks ago. Reminiscing about distant events or planning future behavior is outside the scope of most animal communication systems, but it's quite prevalent in humans. Another key characteristic is structure dependence. Human language, such as conversations or the sentences that we construct, all follow rules. The rules organize information so that others can understand what we are trying to say. While the rules of grammar are different depending on the language spoken, each has the requirement of grammatical sense. Some, such as Noam Chomsky, proposed that the potential to acquire grammar is genetically imprinted in our brain. In contrast, animals don't organize different communicative elements in a structured manner and tend to communicate using simple signals. The second criterion is semiticity. Human language uses abstract symbols and sounds that don't have any meaning in itself to communicate meaningful messages. For example, the word book doesn't sound or look like a book, yet English speakers can understand what it refers to. Animals have a set of ways to signal messages like danger, food, I am stronger, or I have superior genes. However, their signals lack the semiticity we see in human language, which has a word for almost an infinite number of concrete things and abstract or hypothetical ideas. Creativity is another important criterion of human language. Due to the large number of words and the way they can be organized to communicate meaning, we can create an infinite number of sentences to express what we wish to say. This unlimited capacity differs from animals' limited capacity, such as the release of a specific hormone to convey a message. There are endless linguistic ways to communicate about the same event. For example, we can say, I went to see Minions with my mate, I went to see Minions with my best mate, today I went to see Minions with my mate Freddy, and so on. Each of the sentences above is different, and yet they basically communicate the same message. The content of a sentence allows us to add endless detail and increase the complexity of our expression. Human and animal communication similarities. The remaining 7 of the 11 characteristics of language identified by Acheson are common for both human and animal communication. However, it is important to note that while all these features are present in human communication, certain species of animals tend only to possess one or a few of these characteristics. Let's take a look at these characteristics. The use of the vocal auditory channel, both animals and humans, uses sounds, gestures, and body language to communicate. Arbitrariness, the human language uses arbitrary written symbols and arbitrary sounds to convey meaning. Similarly, animals often use arbitrary movements, e.g. the honeybee waggle dance, or vocal signals to communicate. Language is learned. Humans learn language via cultural transmission. This mechanism is not present in all animals, as some animals appear to have an innate ability to use signals like vocalizations. However, some animals do learn how to communicate from others. Spontaneous use of language, humans have an inner need for this, and we don't need to be encouraged or coerced to talk. This feature is also present in animals. Turn-taking: when we communicate with others, we tend to take turns talking or writing. Birds also engage in this. Duality refers to the fact that single units don't make sense on their own, they need to be structured to be meaningful. Duality is prevalent in humans and bees. The single movement of a bee does not have communicative value, but when organized in a repeatedly performed dance, it becomes meaningful. Ability to read intentions: the last feature is the ability to read intentions. For a message to be conveyed and understood, the individual receiving the message needs to be somewhat aware of what the sender of the message aims to communicate. Humans are very skilled at understanding others' emotional states, intentions, beliefs, and perspectives of others without much effort. Whether animals have these abilities is widely debated. Human and animal communication differences. So, in a nutshell, what makes the behaviors that animals use to communicate different to how we communicate? One major difference is that humans rely mostly on verbal communication, while animals use mainly movements, vocalizations, and sense to communicate. Even though we also use body language and gestures, most of our communication involves language. Animal communication is also limited both in terms of the complexity of expressions and the content that can be expressed. Animals communicate about events happening now or close in time, mostly for survival purposes. In contrast, the human language gives us infinite ways to talk about an infinite number of things. We can talk about events far into the future, hypothetical situations, as well as our subjective reality and internal states. Human language is also creative and organized. We have a way of expressing almost every aspect of our experience, which is not so evident in animal communication. There is only so much detail that a honeybee can communicate to help others localize food. They don't have movements that indicate altitude or objects that others will pass on their way to the food source, like mountains or flowers. Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. KHALID MALIK is the founder of Applied Linguistics Groups and he has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. He published more than 25 research papers. He taught a lot of foreign universities and presently admitted to a postdoctoral study in a Canadian university. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966 Pakistani or copying, or downloading a QR code to join at